Thank you for joining us. You are a part of an elite group who recognizes that Black women's health should be at the forefront of the national conversation. We are mothers, daughters, activists, entrepreneurs, entertainers, corporate warriors, and more, who help boost the economy and often drive the national conversation. For 38 years, the Black Women's Health Imperative has strived to amplify our voices, help enact policy that protects us, research our issues, create programs that enhance our lives, and produce events like this one to ensure we keep the conversation going about the issues that matter to us most. So, let's get started with our program.
Yes, welcome to the Black Women's Health Imperative. This panel is Generation Next, empowering the next generation of women's health advocates. I'm Erica Cobb, co-host of the nationally syndicated talk show Daily Blast Live, where we do breaking and trending entertainment news, and also the host of Comeback with Erica Cobb, a podcast you can check out every Sunday. Now, without further ado, I'm going to get straight to this panel because we have so many wonderful professionals in their fields that have a lot of information for you. Now, many young Black women are rising through the ranks and working hard to achieve their lives and careers, but at what cost? Our lively discussion will explore prioritizing self-care while achieving their goals and making an impact in the world by empowering other women. And that's what it's going to be all about. Today, our panelists include Jurnee Smollett, who of course is an actress and activist, Ashley Wisdom, who is the founder and CEO of Health in Her Hue, Ziona Bryant, student activist, community organizer from the University of Virginia, Zane Epps, who is the manager of My Sister's Keeper program for BWHI, Natasha Johnson, multimedia artist and activist, and Dr. Keelan Bishop, who is a biomedical scientist. So without further ado, we are going to bring on our first panelist from My Sister's Keeper, the program manager, Zane Epps.
Hi.
Hey, Zane.
How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Well, I recently watched an interview with you where you said, I'm doing what I can from where I am. So what can you do from where you are? And you were referring to the protest and the fact that you had some pre-existing conditions that prohibited you from going out into the streets, but you were doing what you can from where you are. So in this segment, we're going to kind of give some context around the idea of the strong Black woman and some of the top reasons why this moniker can be damaging to women's health. And I thought this would be a great place to start.
Sure, yes. So I love that quote, and it actually came from Toni Morrison's documentary that's out now. And, you know, so many things were going on at that time, the civil rights movement. And she said, well, I'm not out there protesting, so what can I do from where I am? And of course, we all know that she was an editor and she was helping publish books, especially that of Dr. Angela Davis, who was in one of our earlier panels at the start of our anniversary week. So when I think of that, you know, it's just, we can't be everything to everybody. We can't be everywhere. We definitely cannot clone ourselves. So what could I do from where I am? And so managing the My Sister's Keeper program is where I can do that. You know, My Sister's Keeper was created to empower young Black women on HBCU campuses, to turn them into advocates for reproductive justice and sexual health. So that is very much so needed right now because our rights are under attack. And so with BWHI as a whole, we're always advocating for policies and practices that best fit Black women and girls. So definitely doing what I can from where I am is definitely leading My Sister's Keeper and definitely taking it to a next level. You know, we have so many new exciting things for My Sister's Keeper as we're expanding it right now by leveraging technology. You guys will hear more about the BWHI app as it rolls out, so that way we'll reach more young women on college campuses, as well as those young women who are not on college campuses, who want to be advocates, health advocates, and want to take control of their health and be on the forefront for that. So I'm so excited about definitely leading My Sister's Keeper and doing what I can from where I am.
You know, Johnny, I really appreciated you using that quote in that context because I think a lot of us felt very overwhelmed by not knowing what direction we should go in. If we weren't able to take to the streets during the Black Lives Matter protests, were we doing enough? I certainly felt like I don't know if I'm doing enough, and I was doing as much as I possibly could. How do you direct young women who feel that in their gut, like I need to be doing something, but they're not sure where to go? What was the guiding light for you?
I think one of the biggest things that, well, the biggest theme right now is that the self-care piece. I think, we get so caught up in saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, but we also are not taking the time to recalibrate ourselves and actually centering ourselves to say, is this something that I can do? And when I'm doing it, how do I feel about it? So I think for me, the personal approach is, how do I feel? I don't want to have a million things on my plate because I know how it feels to not feel joy to get those things done, how you power through. So what I try to tell my peers and everyone for inspiration is, no matter where you are, take stock of who you are, what's going on in your world at that moment. Where are you? So what can you do from where you are? Where are you in your mental health and emotional health journey? If you are not at the point to be out and do this, that, and the third with other folks, then take that time for yourself. Self-preservation is key. And so I always, want to speak from that point to say that we can't be everywhere. We can't do everything. But what you can do is take stock of where you are and do it from there. Do it from your heart and do it from your capacity to do it.
Janae, are you purposely trying to speak to my spirit? Because I'm feeling it, okay?
Okay.
This week, I just talked about how Black women are always expected to do the most and then receive the least, because there is this moniker of sorts about the strong Black woman. And we all want to be strong. We want to be strong Black women. But how does this resonate with you? And how does it resonate when it comes to health?
Yeah, so the strong Black woman, I've struggled with that. I'm still young, so I'm still going through it. I think for me, I had all of these goals and aspirations, right? I said I was going to do this, I was going to do that. And then I really didn't start to take stock of that until my last semester of college when my mom passed. When my mom passed, I took on custody of my then 6-year-old brother. He's 12 now. Pray for me. So having to journey through that. And then I said, well, I didn't want that to stop me. I didn't fully grieve, but I wanted to go get my master's. So within that same year, I lost my mom, got custody of my younger brother, and then went straight into my master's program. And I didn't take time for myself. And then I started to think of all the other things that I wanted to do, but then it started to affect me emotionally and mentally. And I realized that I couldn't do everything. I had to take a step back and say, well, how do you feel about it? And when I started to relax myself and, all the goals that I had, I started to feel a lot better because I prioritized how I felt. And I think for a lot of women, we're so determined to do these things and, we don't take account for life to happen in the midst of achieving our goals. And sometimes we all are not equipped with the tools and resources that we need for that time in between our goals. And I think that's very important now and in the future for any of us who have any aspirations and goals, is to really prioritize your self-care. You can have those goals, but in between achieving those goals, think about how you want to feel when you achieve that. I think what the strong Black women thing is, we achieve these things, but when we get there, we're already worn out and tired. So we can't fully enjoy what we just accomplished. And I'm speaking for myself. Now I'm no longer just saying I want to do this, that, and the third. I want to reach my goals and feel good about it and not feel any guilt and feel total joy when I achieve the things that I want to achieve. And so I just want to encourage everyone to do that.
Janae, you deserve to feel that joy. And we are all so sorry to hear about the loss of your mother, but the strength that you're exhibiting by taking on this responsibility of being the caretaker for your brother and all of this that for those of you who don't know, Janae is the reason why we're sitting here today. So thank you so much for all that you've done for Black women in honor of your mother. We're all very proud of you. And thank you so much for being with us today, Janet Epps.
Thank you.
Next on our panel, we have the founder and CEO of Health in Her Hue, Ashley Wisdom. Ashley, how are you?
Hi, Erica. I'm doing well, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you. So I watched your TEDx talk and I really was just so captivated by your story. You talked about a job that was very biased and toxic, and you were experiencing health issues. And the moment that you made a decision to leave that job, suddenly your health issues dissipated. And I thought it was so interesting because you made a comment that if your physician had been a Black woman, you may have volunteered your stress experiences. It may have gotten you to the outcome faster. So
Right.
I do want to talk about the role of healthcare professionals in addressing the issues of health for Black women and how they can be advocates that move towards better healthcare and wellness for the Black women that they serve. So how are you addressing access to much needed health information for Black women through Health in Her Hue?
Yeah, so the platform that I'm building, Health in Her Hue, it makes it easier for Black women to find providers who look like them and who they would be more likely to trust and to, understand their lived experiences, which I think is important when it comes to getting a full picture of a patient. So in that example that you mentioned with me, if I felt that my white doctor would understand microaggressions and would understand what it's like to be a Black woman working in a predominantly white academic space, I might have volunteered to her that I was dealing with microaggressions at work, but that never crossed my mind because I'm like, this white woman is not going to understand that experience. With my Black gynecologist, I talk about brunch, I talk about all these different social things that are going on in my life, and that gives her a better picture of me as a patient. And I think that it's important for providers to really understand the cultural and social context of a patient as they're giving them clinical advice and giving them care. So with Health in Her Hue, that's like the main point, is to make it easier for Black women to find providers that they can better connect with, and also find health information that centers their lived experiences. Because a lot of times we get diagnosis and we find out different things about our health, and then we go online and we don't find information that really reflects us as individuals, and then also the experiences that we have. So that's what I'm working on solving for Black women with Health in Her Hue.
You know, I first heard of Health in Her Hue by someone who follows me on Instagram because I was talking about the fact that I couldn't find Black doctors, whether it be therapists, OBGYNs, physicians. And when you're living in a situation where I am in Denver, Colorado, we are less than 5% African American. So then it becomes a numbers game. Is that
Right.
the biggest obstacle that you're seeing, or are you seeing the idea of there just aren't resources out there to connect the doctors and the patients?
It's a bit of both. So because of structural racism, only 5% of doctors in the United States are Black, even though we make up 13% of the population. And so there aren't enough Black doctors to serve the number of Black patients that exist in this country. So that's the first problem. But since we can't change structural racism overnight and change the systems that make it, or that create barriers for Black people getting into medical school and going into these careers, I want to use technology to make it easier for Black women to connect with Black providers. So even if there isn't a Black doctor near you, or too many near you, I'm hoping that the platform that I'm building can allow patients to connect with Black providers in a virtual setting as well. So it's a mixture of both. It's not enough Black doctors, and then there aren't enough digital solutions to make Black physicians more visible to Black patients.
You know, a lot of there's been a lot of talk about the health disparity, obviously, when it comes to Black women in particular, especially when we're talking about giving birth. Have you seen there be a change in trend in towards of advocacy in terms of like doulas or people who are just 100% focused on advocating for the Black mother?
There is definitely an increase, and I think an increased awareness amongst the Black women to find services like doulas and midwives as pre-pregnancy and also during postpartum care as well. So I think that, and this is why the information is important. Black women are seeing all these headlines that they're 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related complications. And then we're often just left with those doom and gloom statistics, and no one really gives us the information that we need to better advocate for ourselves. But I think doulas are definitely doing their job and making themselves more visible, and explaining what benefits they bring to Black women. And so I think that the increased visibility of doulas and midwives is making Black women it's making them more intentional about seeking out those services, in addition to finding Black providers. And that's something that I'm happy to see, because it's important.
Yes, very, very. Well, you recently tweeted, "I wanted to be Dr. Wisdom so bad, but not bad enough, LOL." What made you change your mind, and how did that impact the other goals that you had for yourself?
So as a first generation student at Howard, I thought that being a doctor was like the answer. And so I was on the pre-med track, and then I realized I don't really want to be in a clinical setting. And then my job after undergrad really showed me that I can affect change in the healthcare space without being a physician. And so that led me to getting my master's in public health policy. And now I'm more focused on how can we use healthcare innovation, or use innovation to address some of the racial disparities and health disparities that we're seeing in healthcare. So the long story short is that I recognize that there are many ways to affect change in healthcare that didn't require me to be a doctor.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to the thought previously, that you have to be able to do what you can from where you are. Exactly. And I just really appreciate what you came up with, because it's so important. Founder and CEO, Health in Her Hue, Ashley Wisdom. Thank you, sis, for talking to us today on this panel.
Thank you, Erica.
Take care. Up next, we have biomedical scientist, Dr. Keelan Bishop. Dr. Bishop.
Keelan is just fine. How are you?
Well, see, my mother is a doctor in terms of like an EDD, and I have a very, very strict policy that when I meet a Black doctor, I call her doctor.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Bishop, you said you can't divorce health outcomes from your environment. So this segment will focus on how science is impacting our health and the importance of biomedical technology for sustainable and advanced care for Black women. So tell us about STEM Noir and how you have carved your niche at the intersection of science, health, and social change.
So while I would like to think that I was just born with this intense passion and, sense of purpose that drove me forward, the niche that I occupy now is literally the culmination of all of my lived experiences. So I lost my grandfather when I was very young to cardiovascular disease. And so I decided that I wanted to be a scientist, that I wanted to improve health outcomes, that I wanted to spare another family the pain of the loss that, my family had suffered. And so, on this track I go. I start taking more advanced science classes in high school. I eventually end up at Morgan State University studying biology. I then go to the University of Miami to earn my PhD in cancer biology. And all of these experiences that I was having were different. So in high school, I had a really transformative female science teacher that influenced my decision to study biology. At Morgan State, I was inspired to actually earn my PhD because I knew so many Black scientists who had gone through it. It just became attainable to me in a way that maybe it wasn't when I was 9. And then when I got to the University of Miami, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, if you will, in the 6.5 years that it took to earn my PhD. And so in that entire process, I learned how to take care of myself. In my early 20s, I started my PhD when I was 20. So I'll say about like 22, 23, I was having anxiety attacks. I was really, really struggling in my professional life, which carried over to my personal life. And eventually it was like coming to Jesus, like, you are no good to the world if you are no good. And so that was the point where I decided that whatever professional pursuit that I had put my mind to was not worth myself. And that was life-changing. I started to take care of myself alongside making sure that, my science and my career was advancing. And that's basically what I want for other Black women. And that's why my co-founder and I, Teresa and I, started STEM Noir. STEM Noir is a research and wellness community for Black women in STEM There are so many Black women who go into science or go into engineering, who go into STEM to save the world, and they end up sacrificing themselves to do so. And so this is basically a community that says, no, we're done with that. We're not doing it anymore. We're going to nurture ourselves alongside our science, and we're going to be honest about the experiences that come with being a Black woman in STEM and the healing and the coping techniques that are necessary to make sure that you emerge in one piece.
Dr. Keelan, I really hope my mother's listening to this right now, because you have so much wisdom. What advice would you give the women who find themselves at an intersection, and how that should not defeat them, but empower them? Because I know there's a lot of guilt that's involved in that.
Janae started us off talking about, superwoman syndrome. And we like to think that we are, individuals who are unaffected by the world around us because we're just we're so amazing. But it's really not the case, right? Like, we deal with so many unique stressors and situations, being Black and a woman both, that it really takes radical honesty with yourself about the things that you're experiencing and the way that it is affecting you, to get to the next stage, which is healing. And that to me is the challenging part. And that's the part where I suggest everybody goes to Health in Her Hue to find a therapist, because there's some work that you may need help along. When we're made to feel as if vulnerability is a weakness, our emotions are a weakness, that we can't be in touch with those parts of ourselves without, sacrificing some level of our legitimacy, then it impedes our progress. So, my advice really is radical honesty. It's okay to be affected by the really toxic things around you. It doesn't make you less than, it makes you human. And more importantly, once you get past that desire to be above it all and to be unaffected by it all, you can get to the place where, yes, things are still going to come your way, but you are better equipped to deal with them. Because let's be honest, microaggressions are likely not going anywhere for a very long time. So what do? We work toward environments where those are not the case, but in the meantime, we adapt the proper coping mechanisms.
I watched a podcast with you, and you were stressing the importance of science communication. And I would like for you to speak to that for a moment, because I think that I'm a person who, my mother's in STEM, but I very much shy away. And because it doesn't equate to me sometimes in layman's terms. But when you talk about science communication, it made me have ownership of the idea of, what if clinical trials were actually crowdsourced and people felt like they were a part of this communication? Can you speak a little bit about that?
I'm so tempted to curse, and I don't know that I can, so I won't. However, I need to pause one moment and give an icon her flowers. Today would have been the 100th birthday of Henrietta Lacks. For those of you who are unfamiliar with who Henrietta Lacks is, she is a Black woman whose cells were stolen when she visited a hospital and used to innovate in science and medicine. At this point, her cells are the cell line that almost every biomedical scientist trains with. That is how fundamental this cell line is to our progress. Black women in particular are made to feel as if our identities are incompatible with science, technology, engineering, and medicine, when in reality, all of these things were built on our backs and on the backs of our ancestors. This is our thing. These are our things. We have the right to exist in those spaces. We actually should have first right of refusal to exist in those spaces. And so when you communicate science the right way, people start feeling included. When you communicate science and technology and engineering and medicine and the fields they're in their entirety, people start feeling included and people start feeling entitled. And we talk about entitlement often like it's a bad thing, but in this case, we are entitled to those spaces and we should exist there. And so, that narrative, when we communicate science properly, we have an opportunity to shift that narrative to what it really should be.
Dr. Keelan Bishop, thank you, sis. Biomedical scientist and science communicator. Thank you. Honestly, thank you for providing access and making it just a little bit more digestible for all of us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Up next, we have multimedia artist and activist, Natasha Johnson.
Hey.
Hey, Natasha.
Hey, what's going on? I'm good. You doing okay?
I am doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. And I have had this very aesthetic gift from you. Just looking at all of your art and the way that you express yourself in the world, it is truly a beautiful thing to see. You said, I use my talents to make others happy, to me, that is what life is about. And I so appreciate that. So I want to discuss more on how art can heal and is an important part of our health, and how we can explore the ways we can use art and creativity for optimizing health outcomes, physically and mentally. So I want you to talk about the self-publication and why you felt it necessary to curate this collection.
Well, yeah, the self-publication is something that I really, truly enjoy working on. It's a photographic book series that I created to raise awareness about the issues going on in the Black community. It's very important to continue helping others tell their stories. And when I started this, it originally started as a publication series that was just going to highlight Black women in their natural hair. But as I met these women over time, I learned more about their stories, and I just had a need to help them tell it. It's very important to do that. So creative writing is important. Showing them that they're beautiful is important, and replacing those harsh stereotypes out there, the harsh memorabilia out in the world, with good imagery is also very important to me. When I came up with this, I was also going through my very own transition. And I was a bit sad. I had a pretty hard upbringing. And, people came into my life, teachers, the family that stayed around to help me as much as they could. And that really did help me thrive to become the creative person I am today. So the self-publication is really my gift to the world. And being able to work with so many brilliant people in the Black community, I wish I can brag about all of them. They're so important to me. And read their stories, and creating this really strong project to share to the world is something that's been meditative and mentally uplifting for me. And I hope it's done the same for them. Just recently, this past winter, I had my first solo exhibit for it. And it was great because so many people came out, and I actually have the boards behind me now, but my aim is spread love, positivity. Is important to do that because in the world, we see so much bad things going on, but I know it's good out there. And when you know that it's good things going on out there, and you advise people that creating is the way to do that, to uplift and to raise awareness about all the beautiful things in the world and how we can solve problems, that's a beautiful thing to me. I do believe that creating is important. I mean, I'm a living product of that creating can help you heal. It can really help you dig deep down inside and find your core, a core that's probably been hurt and shifted so much by different things that you experienced through life. And, I would never tell someone not to create. I don't care if you're drawing a stick figure, create something. It's important, man. I'm telling you.
Natasha, you said that you hope that your work uplifts other people the way that creating it uplifts you. And I just want to assure you, as I'm sure you've been told so many times before, that it absolutely does, because what the self-publication does for people who haven't checked it out, and I would suggest that you do, is it takes you on a journey of sorts to find pieces of yourself. I really appreciate that, because I think that anytime we see these images in public, we're able to find a piece of ourselves in them. So that's a very powerful thing. And for the past few weeks, you have been out documenting the impact of the social unrest and the pandemic in Texas for the New York Times. How has this experience been for you?
This experience, it has been scary because of the situation with COVID. but it's been very uplifting. And the reason why it's so uplifting is because I'm seeing young kids out there. They're standing up, they're protesting, and, you know, they're walking beside like millennials that are, you know, similar or close to their age. It's just a great vibe to see all of those people come together. I was actually at a women's march yesterday, and it was so beautiful being out there. But being able to document for the New York Times gives me a different perspective on life. And I think that's very important because I also work with children. I'm an educator, and I advise them all the time, like, you're great, never give up. They don't have to be the best, but I want them to really, truly thrive. And with the after school program that I work on, the SMART project, we are trying to help students feel good about their creative visions in order to move forward. So by doing this, by documenting for the New York Times and being out and seeing so much of the passion and good work that people are doing, I'm able to take that information and spread it to the students that I work with. Now, I can say with COVID out there, I'm a bit nervous, but it's important that I hope tell our stories. It's very important to do that. And that way we can start to heal in ways that we've never imagined. And I truly want everyone out there and everyone watching this to understand that you are amazing and you matter and you have value. And I'm going to keep documenting to tell the stories that we have. And I'm not going to give up because I think you're awesome. And that's just my calling in life.
Multimedia artist and activist Natasha Johnson. I just have to tell you, I'm putting it on my vision board to work with you one day.
Yeah.
I just think you are absolutely incredible. And I appreciate you mentioning that you are in education, that you do work with students, because I want people to understand the importance of getting images out that our children can see themselves in very early on, because so many of our hangups and scars come from not having those depictions and not having that representation in our formative years. So I really appreciate the work that you do. And thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you.
You take care.
All right, you too.
Up next, we have student activist, community organizer from the University of Virginia, Ziana Bryant. Ziana,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm wonderful, and I'm honored to talk to you. For those of you who don't know, Ziana actually wrote the original petition in 2016 to remove the Robert Lee statue. You were really ahead of the game in a lot of capacities, because we are seeing this movement right now and you have not slowed down. So first of all, we appreciate you. And on this panel today, we want to discuss the importance of activism to impact the health of Black women and the necessity of passing the torch to the future generation. So what does this look like pertaining to issues of health, race, and economics for Black women, in your opinion?
So the work that I do really started out as bringing into question this idea of historical narratives and who has the power to tell their stories, which quickly evolved into me growing into my purpose and understanding of what it means to be a Black woman, especially in the South, and in a place that was once the heart of the Confederacy. But then recognizing that those representations through statues and monuments or street names then translates over into our hidden structures. So the physical landscapes of where people live in a city and their access to, food or to education then affects the way that we interact socially. And so I think for Black women, it's really important that I think the speakers before me mentioned, self-care and taking care of ourselves, because we can't give from an empty cup, but also for younger students like myself, understanding our positioning and our identity and what are the social implications of simply existing, especially in academic or professional spaces.
You mentioned that young people like yourself, but you have been doing this kind of like out of the womb. At 12 years old, you organized your first demonstration. It was a rally for justice for Trayvon Martin and other unarmed Black lives lost to police violence or senseless gun violence. So why was it important for you to start your activism and community organizing at such a young age?
So I come from a family of very strong Black women who have always led in the community. My family's home is still in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and historically one of the only places where Black people lived in Charlottesville. And so my great grandmother, she used to keep her house open for Black students who wanted to attend the Black schools when they were so segregated. And my grandmother, her daughter, is now the president of that neighborhood, which is partly named after my great grandmother. So it's not at all lost on me that my family has a legacy of doing this work. And so just signing up through church activities and being involved in the community at a young age with just trying to learn and find what made me happy was my start. And I remember sitting in the corner of my grandma's living room, which is our family home, the night when George Zimmerman was found not guilty. And I remember the hashtag Black Lives Matter actually going viral that night. And so I remember waking up the next day and saying, what can I do to create the conversation or to start the conversation around police violence here in Charlottesville? And so Charlottesville is a college town. There are people here who believe that police violence and police brutality is an issue that has nothing to do with us. And so for me, it's always been a matter of taking these national issues and bringing them back to local government. And so even in middle and high school, my involvement was going to city meetings and being a part of local organizing on the ground, because I believe that a grassroots approach is how we get the most work done.
Well, you are doing it. Absolutely. And you also have published your first book. So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
It's a collection of poetry and essays titled Reclaim. What inspired you to do this?
So when I wrote the petition to take down the Robert E. Lee statue, it was only a matter of time before my own name was being erased from that effort. And so I think as I've learned and as I've read Black women scholars, I've realized that this is not new. If we look back at the civil rights movement and we think about the names that we remember, Black women are not always at the forefront of how we remember that time. And so for me, it was so important to say the erasure of Black women stops now. So I'm going to write my own narrative. I'm going to take these little notebook entries that I collected over the years, and I'm going to publish them so that people understand that, no, this was started, created, and driven by Black women. And so I am I'm very, very passionate about making sure that Black women's narratives are told. We are the first in the streets for everyone. We always put ourselves on the line for every single issue, it seems. But when it comes down to making sure that those names are remembered, it happens in a way that isn't often. So I wanted to make sure that other Black girls also are able to stand up in their power and to remember that the work that they do is not going unnoticed.
Mm. During a press conference, you said there will be no healing and reconciliation until we have equity. What is equity to you?
So equity is making sure that everyone has what they need to be on an equal playing field. I think oftentimes when we talk about equity, we're actually thinking about equality. And so for me, equity looks like making sure that first generation college students like myself are able to go to school and not just go for free, but also be well supported. It looks like making sure that Black and brown people who are often being evicted and put onto the streets are not being evicted and who have a place to live and have, shelter and food and all of the things that they need to survive. But equity really looks like empowering the future generations to have, economic stability, to have education, and to have the social and cultural capital that we haven't had for so long, especially as young Black girls. So, yep.
Well, I appreciate you. And we are reclaiming the name, honey. Student activist, community organizer, Ziana Bryant. Say her name because it's important that the erasure does not exist. And, I really appreciate you saying that your name was almost immediately removed from the narrative, because I think that people think of that as something that happened in olden times, but it's very much current. And I appreciate you bringing that to light. So thank you, Ziana, so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Up next, we have actress and activist Jurnee Smollett. Jurnee, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing so well. I really appreciate you joining us today. I found it interesting watching a few interviews with you. Something that people may not know is that your parents met working in the movement with Angela Davis. And I think it was so appropriate that she kicked things off for the Black Women's Health Imperative, and you're wrapping them up. This is like synergy in its finest. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So you recently quoted James Baldwin in one of your Instagram posts saying, "I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive." What does that phrase mean to you as a person who has used your celebrity to help the cause that leaves us all overwhelmed at times?
Yeah. One, I love James Baldwin so much. But for me, here's the thing, pessimists are people who've lost hope, and I, for one, particularly over the past few year and a half, especially, have struggled to not lose my faith in humanity, my faith in people. I found myself all last year saying, almost like it was a mantra, just repeating over and over, saying, the world is trash, the world is trash, the world is trash. And, James Baldwin goes on to say in that quote, to be a pessimist means that you've agreed that human life is an academic matter. It's not. Life is not an academic matter. I reject that notion, right? Life, it's truly a gift to be alive. And yet when we are being bombarded with so much darkness, it's hard sometimes, for me at least, to remember what a gift it is to be alive. You understand? And I'm coming to understand that to have faith in spite of your circumstances is actually quite audacious. And for me, the stakes are too high for me to be a pessimist. We're talking about life or death right now. We're being killed in the streets. Our siblings are perishing because of the systemic racism, right? And so as long as I have breath in my body, when so many have lost their lives uttering the painful words, "I can't breathe," okay, how dare I waste my life? It's not lost on me that my very existence is a radical act, and I it's a daily practice also for me to check my privilege. Okay, I have an obligation to Sandra Bland. I have an obligation to Breonna Taylor to live, to fight, to do everything in my power to prevent those words, "I can't breathe," from being uttered by any other Black or brown sibling of mine.
Journey, you said something that kind of resonated with me because, one, you're talking about checking your privilege, but also the idea that you get into these, cycles where it's like the world is trash. And sometimes it's very difficult to separate the forest from the trees, even though the theme is, I'm grateful to be here. I owe it to those who aren't here in order to move on. What do you do in that moment? Because I feel like the moment is the most critical. What is an activator for you to change that switch?
I try to find a way to channel that energy. And it's, like everyone, when you see these videos or you hear about another sibling of ours, right, who's been a victim to this systemic racism, it brings up a rage in me that sometimes feels crippling, honestly. And I know we all can relate to that. One of my teachers talks about blood memory a lot with me. I'm the daughter of a Black woman from New Orleans and a Jewish man from Queens, New York. Okay, so I have this blood memory, this visceral ancestral connection to the oppression of my people. And so sometimes my body literally will vibrate with so much rage. And what I'm finding lately, the way I can best serve that rage is to channel it into action. It doesn't help me to just sit in it. And the action can be small or big. It could be as small as I need to write a poem or a journal, or, check up on my siblings, or it can be as big as, let me call Patrisse Cullors and just say, what do you need me to do? What's the action for today? Let me call Dr. Melina and say, y'all organizing, like, where are we meeting today? Jackie Lacey must go. All right, where are we meeting? You know, like, I can't just sit and I was listening to the panel earlier. I can relate to that feeling of like, oh my gosh, it's COVID, and you know, what do we do? The first time I left my home, in like over 80 days or something like that, besides going to the grocery store, was to attend a BLM meeting in a church basement, you know, and at first it was a little odd to be around people, and like someone came and hugged me, and we all had masks on.
Right.
Wait, yo, elbow, you know, like, but honestly, for me, that was food for my soul. And I'm realizing that I have to channel this energy, or else it becomes very toxic to my mental health.
Right.
And look, these are not tactics that I'm suggesting that work for everybody, but for me, I gotta channel it into something more positive.
I appreciate you saying that it may not help or work for everyone, but I do think fundamentally it can and it does, because when you're talking about, you know, calling up and saying, what can I do? It would be very beneficial to a lot of us to have a action plan. You know, it's not like these thoughts aren't cyclical. It's not like these feelings aren't cyclical. So it's almost like preparing for the moment that you may not be able to see the forest from the trees. And it comes up a lot. I mean, in this movement for Black Lives Matter, this is the first time in history that a lot of people who have been on the front lines for decades are saying that it is a overwhelming sound coming from diverse places and spaces and people. And people are acknowledging that racism is a public health crisis. So
well, we are fighting two pandemics right now.
Exactly. And the country is very polarized over the renewed interest in Black Lives Matter. And of course, the politicizing of everything from COVID to police brutality and shootings. But being on the front line, you said that it makes it more effective for you not only to be the change, but also to change the rage that might be coming up inside, which I think is very important. Now, you've been acting in serious, thought-provoking movies and TV shows since you were a child. So tell us about your new show, Lovecraft Country, and what parallels does it hold for modern America?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited about Lovecraft Country. You're not ready for it. Just let me warn you. You think you know what it's going to be, and you don't. I'm just putting it out there, okay? Like, you know, but essentially, this is a story that is very ancestral. You know, our heroes go on a quest to bring down white supremacy, and yet along the way, it's like, because this is the brain of Misha Green, who I was so fortunate to work with on Underground. She created Underground as well. You know, it's through this radical reimagining of this story, and it's this big sci-fi thriller horror thing, and yet it's centering Black voices in a genre that we've been shut out from for so long. I'm a fan of sci-fi thriller horror, and yet haven't been able to do much of it because most times I've been offered the role of the Black chick who's killed on page 33, you know, which is not very satisfying artistically. And so, yes, our show explores the themes that we are unfortunately still dealing with today. You know, the systemic racism that our nation's been built upon has yet to be dismantled. We've yet to heal from it. And Lovecraft is very relevant. I mean, the themes we deal with are very relevant today. You know, Emmett Till is Trayvon Martin. Okay. We're walking in circles as a nation, and the sobering reality is that there is no day or month or year that Lovecraft could be released or could have been released since 1619, and the themes wouldn't be relevant. But the thing that makes me so encouraged about this art that we've created in Lovecraft is it's bold, it's audacious, it is unlike anything you have ever experienced in TV. and especially on a scale that we haven't really been afforded within this genre. So I'm so excited for people to see it. I'm incredibly proud. It's one of those few projects that you're a part of where you walk away feeling like this was mighty. This was mighty art we just created. So I can't wait for you to see it.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see Lovecraft Country either after you talked about it like that, because we're always looking for a connection between what we're going through and where we are in the moment. But there's this idea of escapism. So we're escaping, but it still very much is an intersection between what's happening in the world and, you know, what you're bringing from an artistic form. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, you know, Misha has such a gift for maintaining varying degrees of tone. I mean, it's a wild ride. Like 1 minute it feels like Indiana Jones, next minute it's like some crazy horror thing. And yet it's a family drama at its core, and you will see your family in this show, because I know I do.
That's amazing. Check out Lovecraft Country. Journey Smollett, thank you so much for being so transparent with your testimony and just giving us the gift of just thought in terms of where we are right now and how to take better care of ourselves physically and emotionally. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being you.
Thanks. I appreciate you. We're going to bring all the panelists back because we're going to have a roundtable discussion. So, hello. Are we welcoming everyone back?
Hi.
Hey, Mama.
We have Journey, Ash,
everyone.
Diana, Janae, Natasha, Dr. Keelan Bishop. Hi, ladies. I wanted to give you a moment, if any of you, because some of you who came in on the back end were able to kind of comment on the panelists from earlier. But for those of you who are on the front end, did you want to talk about any of the cross sections between some of the panelists and the content today?
Yes, I wanted to start it off. The reason why I conceived this panel is because I wanted to show a wide spectrum of what all are doing as Black women right now during this time, and that we all hold a space that intersects at some point. And I just wanted to show that, you know, especially with the storytelling, celebrity, Journey Smollett, you know, Dr. Bishop, who's doing it in the biomedical field, you know, Ashley Wisdom, who is out there creating technologies, connect folks, you know, Natasha, who's out there documenting things, Ziana, for being out there and being on the front lines to do that. So I definitely wanted to show that on this panel today, that, you know, we're all doing great things, you know, from where we are, and we will continue to do it and continue to collaborate, because we all need each other to get this work done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I did want to add that the information shared here today it's beautiful. It's very beautiful, and being able to cross all of this useful data will not only help us continue to grow to help other people, but to help everyone watching grow as well. Mental health is important. You know, creating when you have time, like really soaking in nature, applauding each other, and connecting in ways to help push the community forward, as well as the world, is really going to help us thrive in ways we can't imagine. And I believe in happiness, and I know it's in all of us. And this is just a really great panel, and hearing all of the information from all of you women, it's amazing.
I would add in that hearing everyone talk about their respective work just reminds me of a Toni Morrison quote that I really love. She says, "I get angry about things and then I get to work." And I think it's important for us to hold space for our emotions as Black women. Like, we have a right to feel rage in this moment. We have a right to pause from the rage and take care of ourselves. But then just seeing everyone and hearing everyone talk, that piece about taking that anger, taking that energy, and then getting to work in our respective lanes, I think is important. And then another thing that I'd add is that, you know, there's a lot of talk about self-care, which is important, especially for us as Black women. But I read a piece by Dr. Melissa Harris Perry that really revolutionized my way of thinking about self-care. She talks about squad care and the importance of community, that care cannot just be done on an individual basis, that we need the people, we need our people, we need other Black women to really take care of ourselves. And that is really self-care when you think about it. That's all.
I love that. I'm writing that down, squad care.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that note about squad care, because I think collective care is like so important, especially after August 11th and 12th here in Charlottesville, and like all of the trauma that we all share. It's nice to have people who are taking care of each other. So people who are doing meal trains for activists, or people who are buying school supplies for activists when they forget to get things together. And I mean, literally, we were on this panel and I got a notification from a friend that said, I just dropped a bouquet off on your porch. So
oh my God.
Yeah, so give Black women their flowers.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
That's a good friend.
Yes.
Is.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I don't want to say that. Did anyone else want to say anything? Oh no, I said I didn't want to keep talking about time. I wanted to definitely have everyone to get to chime in because I was just going to touch on the mental health piece.
I would just throw in one more plug that this world of healthcare, there's a lot of stuff happening on the innovation side. People are coming up with different innovative tools and solutions, and there really aren't many that speak to the experiences of Black women, which is why I came up with my idea for Health in Her Hue. And so, I just want to encourage Black women to take a look into that space, because there's a need for us to get care that really reflects our unique lived experiences. And there's money out there to be had to create these solutions. And so I just wanted to make that plug as well.
Yes. And I just wanted to add, especially when we think about our mental and emotional health during this time, and as we're all doing great work, BWHI, we have a stress test on our website that you guys can take and actually see where you are on the lines of stress. And we actually have this emotional wellness guide for you based on where you fall in the stress test. And I think that's so important. And when we talk about squad care, having places where we assess ourselves together, that way it doesn't seem like you are burdening folks with your issues, that they are going on that journey with you. And I think that sometimes tends to turn people off when they feel like they can't turn to other folks because they're trying to unpack those things. But I think if we start to look at that radical self-care, and we start to look at the community and start to talk about those things together, I think that will really support each and every one of us, when we're by ourselves and when we're together, to keep moving forward and to definitely take stock of where we are. So I just wanted to add that in.
Janae, again, we wouldn't be here together if it weren't for you and your vision. So we all want to thank you so very much. For giving you your flowers. I like to say that it's not my responsibility to be the expert, but to amplify the voices of those of you who are. So thank you to all of you for allowing me to facilitate that today. And so I just want to give a shout out to everyone. Actress Journey Smollett, we got you, girl. Founder and CEO of Health in Her Hue, Ashley Wisdom. Student activist and community organizer, Zayana Bryant. My Sister's Keeper program manager and the queen of the day, Janae F. Multimedia artist and activist, Natasha Johnson, and biomedical scientist, Dr. Keelan Bishop. Ladies, thank you all so much for spending time with us today and gracing us with your wisdom and your presence. And I want to thank you all, the audience, for being a part of this panel, as well as being a part of the 38th anniversary of Black Women's Health Imperative. So please continue to support this organization and the great work that they are doing to provide access and tools for Black women. Visit bwhi.org for more information about upcoming events, new policies, and all things health for us. Thank you to each of you today, to all of our panelists. It's been an honor to be with you. I am your host, Erica Cobb. Have an amazing day.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye. Thank you.